So today we're reading Sefer Yehoshua Chapter 4. So this chapter is really part one story with chapter 3. We could have read it together, because whoever's cut up the chapter has cut it up here. And as we've discussed, there's some difficulty with making sense of the order of the story here. It seems to be going back and forth. It doesn't seem to be written in correct chronological order. So there's like a new beginning where this chapter starts, which sort of repeats the end of the previous chapter. In other words, let me clarify. The previous chapter had the story, and each story, as we've seen, comes surrounded with words. So there's the words, the first story where Yehoshua told the people to follow the Uran, to follow the ark, and they followed it. Then so that's one aspect. It doesn't even say explicitly yet about the Yarden splitting or stopping. It just talked about the people following the Uran and the ark. Then there was a second dialogue surrounding a second story, which was Hashem telling Yehoshua that he will make him great in the eyes of the people, and Yehoshua telling this to the people, and him saying differently. Very interesting. Hashem tells Yehoshua he will make him great in the eyes of the people, and then Yehoshua doesn't tell the people they will be great. He will be great in their eyes. He tells the people that they will know that Hashem, the living God, is with them. So in other words, Yehoshua interprets what was told to him, that you will be great in the eyes of the people, that they will know that I'm with you like you're with Moshe, to understand that means that he's with them primarily, that God lives with them. And he describes how the Yarden will stop once the Uran goes in there, and they will pass in front of it. And that happened. So that's really the end of chapter 2. So it's like one more full narrative that has these words, this explanation of the function, of the goal of all of this, and the thing happening. Now, this chapter starts like this, but we have to read it a little bit differently, because it says, as all the people, the entire nation, finished crossing the Yarden, then Hashem tells Yehoshua the command of taking the 12 racks and erecting them, making them something in Gilgal. But then again it says, so we have to understand this as something that happened afterwards. So not that the command only happened then, maybe the command already happened before, but the point is we should see all of this as part of, it's sort of like we could say that when they're still in the Yarden or something, but as part of the story. But it's a fresh story, and that's why it starts again. It goes back to what I just said. They all passed through. So we have one story that miracle happened and they passed through, but now there's a specific command, a specific mitzvah related to this. And it's described in the same style as very common structure in the Chumash and in Tanakh maybe in general, but definitely in the Chumash and in these Sefer Yehoshua. We have the mitzvah, and we have the double level of the mitzvah I've discussed. Hashem tells Yehoshua, and Yehoshua tells the people. Hashem tells Yehoshua to tell the people. So Hashem tells Yehoshua to tell the people, and we've already had a little bit of this before. That's why I said we have to understand this really as of having happened before. So the Vayikash Shetam was just explaining to us that a new cycle or a new sequence is starting here. Hashem tells Yehoshua to tell the people to take 12 men, one for each tribe, one from each shevet, and to tell these people to carry from mimatzav raglikan, from the place where the Kohanim are standing, 12 stones, and take them along with them to the mullen, to the place where they will sleep over, the place where they will stay tonight. And that's what Yehoshua does. Yehoshua, of course, we had already 12 people prepared before, so obviously there was something before. Yehoshua calls these 12 people, as he says, the 12 people that he prepared, so he already knew that this was going to happen, so it's not the command wasn't discovered now. So again, not chronological order. And he tells them, go in front of the Uran, by where the Kohanim are standing. Each one of you picks up one stone for the amount, and the same amount as the tribes. And Yehoshua explains the point of this now. He explains the point, and here's this very basic logic of how a ois, or how a sign, and a sign that's supposed to continue throughout generations, is supposed to work. And also has the same structure that we had in Sefer Dvarim, but also already in Sefer Shemos, the structure of the questions of the children and their answers. So everyone knows this from Haggadah Pesach. Ki yish'alcha bencha, your child will ask you something about a certain mitzvah, about the mitzvah of Pesach, about the mitzvah of Bechorim, of Petach HaMoed, and so on. And then the father, or the pasuk, telling you that you will answer your son this. So here we have the same structure, and from here I think it's very revealing as to how the structure is supposed to work. It says like this: you're going to take these stones in order that it should be a sign between you, a sign for you. So when your children tomorrow, and tomorrow here doesn't mean tomorrow literally, right? Tomorrow obviously meaning in the next generation, your children that weren't here will ask you, what are these rocks? What are these stones? And you will answer them. These rocks are a sign that the waters of the Yarden were split in front in front of the Ark of Hashem, when he went through the Yarden. And these stones will be a zikaron, will be a memory for the people to remember this story. And we'll see later it repeats this question and answer formats. In other words, the question and answer works. We erect this monument. Of course, a monument not necessarily say something by itself. Not that the monument will have words. Later we'll see that there were stones that we wrote Torah on, but apparently these are different stones. So just a monument, it's just like a monument. Okay, it has 12, so to symbolize the 12 tribes. Each of one of them erected one stone, but still the monument doesn't say anything. The monument is sort of like what we call sometimes a conversation piece. The monument is there, so people should ask, what is this all about? And we'll say, oh, this was erected when the people crossed by the Yarden along with the Yarden, and that split the Yarden. That's how the logic of this question and answer works. The question and answer is expressing that the monument doesn't say anything itself, but it's an opportunity. It's going to cause you children to ask the question, and you will tell them, you'll give on with them the story. And there we have the next step of this cycle. The people listen to them, do what Yeshua do. They carry 12 stones from the Yarden, as Hashem told Yeshua, and they carry them to the Mullen, to the place where they slept, and they put them there. Now, besides for this, and this is very interesting, does not clear where that Yeshua got this idea. Besides for this, Yeshua stood up, erected 12 stones in the Yarden itself, under the place where the Canaanite was standing, and they're still there to this day. This Adiyam Mazeh is another one of the catchphrases that is in Sefer Yehoshua, also in Sefer Dvarim many times, and in Sefer Bereshis and other places. And then what it's trying to tell you is, if you go in the Yarden now, you'll see somewhere this monument. Maybe it's under the water. Maybe you can only see it when the water recedes, or there's a low tide or something, so you could somehow see it. But somewhere there are still these 12 stones, and they are in the Yarden also. Besides for the being stones in the Mullah and Bagilgal, as we'll see, there's also 12 stones in the Yarden, and that's for the same reason. Okay. Now we're going back to the story again, as if, right? And here it seems like we already went back all the way. This little narrative followed us all the way till where they put up the stones. But now we're back. We're starting another piece of the story, another story. And it says like this. And here we have the order. I think what we have here is, what this piece adds is, again, I think we have to read each of these as a fully separate thing. But what this one adds is the order of how the people passed. And remember, there was a very important thing in chapter 1. We already had that. It was very important that the Bnei Gad of Reuven, which were supposed to be the vanguard, that they actually went in front of the people. So here, already in the Adam, it's slightly symbolic, because it seems to have at least not been a war here. It's not like a battle where they had to be the vanguard, but they went in front of the people armed, so to show that they're going in front of them and they're crossing the river. Although they don't need to cross the river, they have their place, their nachla, they already have their inheritance on the other side. They're going in order to fight with the people. So it says like this: the Kehanim carrying the Yarden were standing there until Yeshua finished commanding the people this about the stones, and the people passed by. So again, before it seemed like the people passed by first, and then Yeshua told them, and sort of those 12 people went back. But if read before, we saw that the 12 people were chosen before and were told to do this before by Yeshua already, or they're told to be there. They're not told what to do. They were told to sort of be ready for something. But in any case, that's what I think, that if we try to make chronology here, it won't work. But the point is, after the people went through, then the Kehanim go in front of the people. Again, how can that be? As the Kehanim go in front of the people, in other words, they pass by and go in front of them, maybe. But I think the more important piece here is this piece, this report that says the sons of Reuven, the sons of Gad, and half of Menashe went forth armed in front of the people, as Moshe told them. And he gives a number, 40,000 armed people, like soldiers or people ready for armed and, belted, something like that. People dressed in a way for war, for an army. They passed by in front of Hashem. The Hashem means, again, in front of the Oren, to Arvis Yericha, to the Arava, to the plains of Yericha. There was Arvis Moed, which is on the right side, we call the right side, right on the east bank of the river, and then Arvis Yericha, which is on the west bank of the Yarden, and they passed through there. And here we have the report that precisely, and now we're going back. This plus it goes back to what it says before. Hashem told Yeshua that this miracle, to him causing this, will make him great in the eyes of the people. And it says that's what happened. On that day, Hashem made Yeshua great in the eyes of Enikal Yisrael. Remember, this was the language of the end of the Torah. Asheras Moshe Enikal Yisrael is very important. But maybe one of the big points of the miracles that Moshe did was to make him to give him authority in the eyes of all of Yisrael, and same thing, Yeshua now had authority in the eyes of all Yisrael. Vayiros, and they were afraid of him, they feared him, afraid is maybe too strong, they feared him, they took him seriously as they feared Moshe all of his life. And now, we get sort of, maybe I should have made another stop here. It's hard to cut up so much, but we could cut up here, because until now we were sort of, the framing of the story is at least still in the Yarden, so to speak, although we already discussed twice how they went out, so it doesn't work. But here we have the end. So just like we had before a command, just to be clear, just like we had before a command, it said, Hashem told you right here, it says, Hashem, we had this detail of their legs, their feet, seems to be important here. Their feet touching the water, and the water stopped, and Hashem commanded them, they did it. Here we have the precise opposite, the reverse of that command. Hashem tells the Yeshua to tell the Kehanim to go out of the Yarden, and the Yeshua tells the Kehanim that, and as their the flats of their feet touch the dry land, the Marden returns to its way, and they go as it went yesterday, as it always went. Al Kol Gadosav, it's full, as we said before, it was Mule Al Kol Gadosav on all its banks, right? It was in a high state, the Yarden, and it continued back. So that's the end of the story of the Yarden. Now we have two more notes following up. I at least put it as two more notes, and including the beginning of chapter 5, although maybe really can be started there, but that's why I think of dividing it. Now we have an important note of the date. As we've discussed, this story seems to care about which date it was. It doesn't say exactly when the date of the 3 days started. We could calculate backwards and figure out when it was. But the important thing is that there's a date, the 10th day of the first month. In other words, and there's a 10th of Nisan, right? What we call sometimes the 10th of Nisan, of course, is a significant date already in the Torah. In Parshas Bo, we had the command, the mitzvah of making the Korban Pesach on the 10th day. So it seems to be important, significant this connects us to the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Of course, if you follow all the beginning of Sefer Devarim, we had Moshe beginning his speech on the 11th month, which is like close to the end of the year before. So this is 3 months later, or 2 months later, the third month later, where they went up from the Yarden and they rested in a place called Gilgal, which is at the edge of the east of Yericho, right? East Yericho is a little to the west of them. They're close to the Yarden, between the Yarden and Yericho, so to speak. And Yeshua also fulfills what we said that he was going to do, and he erects these 12 stones that he took from the Yarden in Gilgal, which is that place where they rested. And he explains what we explained before already. It repeats, but with slightly more details. Your children will ask you what these stones are, and we'll explain them that Yisrael passed by, went through the Yarden in dry land, which Hashem made dry, just as he did for the Yamsef, that he made it dry until we passed by. He did here. And the point of this, all of this is, so that all the nations of the world will know the hand of Hashem, which is strong, and so you will fear Hashem, your God, all your days. So these were and we could even divide this, if you want, into like 4 different goals, 4 different functions of the splitting, of the drying. I don't want to say the word splitting, the cutting, right? The krisas, the Yarden stopping to go and allowing the people pass by, to make Yeshua great in the eyes of the people, to let the people know that Hashem is with them, and he will, as Yeshua told them, and he will make them win the wars with the Canaanite and the other inhabitants of the land. That's number 2. Number 3, so those people, those nations are afraid of Hashem. They know the hand of Hashem, similar to Hazruchav, where he said about Kriyas Yamsef, that made them strong, and as the Pasuk here will report in a minute. And 4th, so the people fear God all their days. So the people themselves, so this is more like fear. Before it was chizuk, like making them strong, giving them courage. And here it's about them taking seriously God, them knowing that God is strong. But maybe this fourth thing, or these two things, are about the future generations. So in that generation, they needed courage. But in the future generation, the problem is not going to be courage so much. The problem is remembering that it was God that brought them out of Egypt and crossed them the Yarden into this, and that's called Yiras Hashem Kol HaYomim. I think Yomim here should be translated as generations, just like Mocha means the next tomorrow, not literally tomorrow, but the next generation. So Kol HaYomim means always, in all generations. And now we have the beginning of chapter 5, which I think is the report that what Yeshua told them in the Pasuk before, the Mandas Kol HaMeoretz, was actually happened as and it's interesting, I don't know the meaning of this report, that all the Malchei HaMoedi, which are to the west of the Yarden, right? So in other words, in Israel, and the Malchei Canaanite, which are on the sea. So maybe these are like people more west and more east. Like Malchei HaMoedi are the ones more to the east. To the east, Malchei Canaanite are the ones more on the shore, more to the west. closer to the ocean. And they heard that Hashem dried up the waters of the Yarden for the people. Ad Ovram. This seems to be a word that keeps on repeating here. In other words, the waters waited for them until the people to pass. Maybe it took a few hours or a few days even. We don't know how long. It says in the 10th day of Nisan. But it might have taken all day or something. And it's like they have the same language in Shiras Yam. Ad Yaveram Hashem, Ad Yaver. It seems to be like a strong emphasis on the fact that it's not like it was passed and they have to run through. It was split and they had to run through. The water sort of waited, so it was for them. It was for them and for all of them. And the point of all this pasuk is to say all those nations, all those kings, and their heart melted within them. This is terminology, a military terminology for loss of courage, loss of morale, right? It was about someone that's a coward and is afraid of war, that he could melt his brother's hearts as his heart. So that's what means being afraid. They did not have spirit in them, relative to Bnei Yisrael, and this is also a word that means something like courage. I think spirit, mostly in the Torah, in these contexts, means something like courage, ruach, in Greek thumos, I think, which is translated as spirit or courage. They didn't have a spirit, and their spirit they didn't stand. This is what Osrochav said, like kom pesh. They didn't have, that's the image of standing up or having courage. Their spirit cannot stand up in front of the people.